Professional Development Forum is a yearly series. It's a yearly program organized by LASUMEGA through Professional Development Committee. We are saddled with the responsibility to train and expose our members to various IT skills and professions. We also incubate ideas and nurture them till they materialize. We build a system and develop several solutions, and in most cases, we commercialize this. So I would like to implore everyone to please be attentive, sit tight, because today's program is going to be fulfilling, inspiring, motivating, and very insightful. The Nigeria Decade of Gas Initiative. And I would like to appreciate our sponsor for today, Lagos State University Muslim Engineering Graduate Association, that is LASUMEGA, through the Professional Development Committee. To begin the program, I would like to call on Brother Saeed Oyewole to give us the opening prayer. Brother Saeed, please, kindly unmute your mic and give us the opening prayer. Thank you. Brother Saeed, are you there? Hello, Brother Saeed Oyewole. Okay, Brother Alamin Saba, please give us the opening prayer.
We give thanks to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Lord of incomparable majesty. We seek his infinite and boundless mercy on our noble prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his household and his companion, the Muslim Ummah at large. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make this event a fruitful one for every participant. We also pray to Allah to guide our guest speaker, to direct us to that which will be beneficial to us in this world and the hereafter. We also pray to Allah to guide the heart of we, the listeners, to take the best from the conversation and make use of it, and also make use of it to benefit ourselves in this world and the hereafter. Al-Fatiha. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir-Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. جزاك الله خير.
Thank you, Brother Alhamin Saba, for that opening prayer. Thank you, everyone, once again for joining. I'm pleased to inform everyone that we have a very wonderful speaker in the house today. And to do the citation of the speaker, I would like to call on Engineer Bebson for the citation of the guest speaker.
Now, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
All right, by name Olajide Habibullah. Okay, so I hereby am privileged to welcome everyone to this honorable gathering, LASUMEGA, the Lagos State University Muslim Engineering Graduate Association. And I also welcome all professionals to this virtual webinar. I'm also honored to welcome our guest speaker to this occasion. Today's webinar is presented to us by the Professional Development Committee of the LASUMEGA. And the topic for this afternoon session is the Nigeria Decade of Gas Initiative. The Nigeria Decade of Gas Initiative, which will be discussed by our professional guest speaker, Dr. Abubakar Abbas, who happens to be a lecturer in petroleum and gas engineering from the University of Salford, Manchester. Let's take ourselves through a brief of the profile of our distinguished lecturer for today's program. Dr. Abubakar Abbas is a chartered engineer with Engineering Council, UK, under the Institution of Gas Engineers and Managers, UK, and a PhD graduate in gas engineering, Allah Akbar, fellow of Higher Education Academy, FHEA, with over 16 years combined industry and academic experience, with a passion for research in the field of gas pipelines, gas network code, carbon capture, and utilization, enhanced gas recovery, natural gas processing and treatment, LNG facilities, flow assurance, among others. He has substantial knowledge on the job experience as process and pipeline engineer at Transara Gas Pipeline Project, ExxonMobil Major Integrity Projects. He also has experience in Escravos Lagos Pipeline Project, ELP2. He is highly experienced. He also has experience on Abuja Kaduna Kano Pipeline Projects, as well as on the job experience in process modeling, energy forecast modeling, economic modeling, and capture environmental research. Allah Akbar. So our distinguished lecturer for today has close working relation with organizations of petroleum exporting country, OPEC, and many other international and national companies. Permit me to tell you that our able distinguished lecturer for today has graduated 7 PhD students in different fields of gas and petroleum engineering and published several high-impact journal papers. He is currently program leader, MSc Petroleum and Gas Engineering at the University of Salford, Manchester, United Kingdom, and consultant in many gas engineering projects across the globe. That's a short introduction of our guest speaker.
Oh, thank you, Engineer Bebson, for that wonderful citation of the guest speaker. I am very sure that today is going to be a fulfilling session, and having this kind of speaker comes once in a while. And our rapporteur, I would like to let everyone know that you can drop your questions in the chat box. Our rapporteur for today will be Sister Mustafa Alima. Please, Sister Mustafa Alima, if you are there, kindly say Taslim to the house. Sister Mustafa Alima will be responsible for taking note of the salient points on the lecture for the day. Like I said earlier, I would like to implore everyone to be very attentive and sit tight, because today's session is going to be interesting. Our guest speaker, as earlier introduced, is our distinguished Dr. Abubakar Abbas, lecturer in Petroleum and Gas Engineering, University of Salford, Manchester, United Kingdom. I know that the allotted time will not be enough because we have a lot of experience, but for the next 40 minutes, Dr. Abubakar Abbas, please, the floor is yours, sir. Thank you, sir.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Thank you very much, Brother Tayo. Thank you for the kind introduction, but unfortunately you have introduced me more than what I am. I am still a student of knowledge, and the only thing is the Holy Prophet ﷺ said, Khairul Kalam man qalla wa dalla. So we don't know much, and we are going to obey the hadith of the Prophet to make sure that we said a little that will benefit our humanity, inshallah. I must first of all mention, let me just confirm that you can see my slides and you can hear me. Brother Tayo, can you confirm that?
Yes, I can see a slide and I can hear you.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you, Brother Tayo. Okay, thank you very much to everyone who managed to make it today. It's really wonderful day to see you guys. Myself, I'm also a Lagosian to some extent. I work in Lagos for about a year or so around Eco Hotel in a company called Delta Afrique, opposite Eco Hotel. They are now currently a bit away from that place. They have built their permanent site somewhere. So one very interesting thing just before I proceed is really to appreciate the wonderful effort that LASUMEGA is doing to bring our community together, and also to reimpose learning and to make sure that people continuously put themselves within the atmosphere of learning new skills, and that will be able to help and make as a better society. As Prophet ﷺ said again, "Khairun nasu man yanfa'un nas." That means the best of mankind is he who bring benefit to others. I'm very glad again to see LASUMEGA making this wonderful and very interesting discussions or conversations that help people to be able to build their competences. And that is really a very good prophetic initiative. And also when I got this invitation through my brother Ibrahim, I said I can't turn it down. No matter how busy I am, I really have to speak to my brothers as a way, and sisters as well, as a way of knowledge exchange. Now, thank you very much again, guys. I'm very sure that despite the short period of time we have, we will be able to pick up something from it. I know I have 40 minutes. I will try to fit it within the time frame. Now, today's conversations is around Decade of Gas initiative in Nigeria, and I'm sure a lot of people must have heard this, but I consider today Avenue as a way to be able to give some critical thought around the area, but from government side and from individual side. We as Nigerians, where do we position ourselves to benefit ourselves and society in this Decade of Gas initiative? So it's a wonderful initiative and a very promising one, and we are going to see why, but I will be able to take you through what we have. So this is just the highlight of what we are expected to cover, just 5 areas. We'll start with introduction of global energy industry, and that will help us to understand the clear global landscape in terms of energy and why energy is now under a complete transition globally, and why is Nigeria bringing the Decade of Gas to meet the global energy initiative as well as domestic growth. We will then look at some expectations we want to see from the Decade of Gas initiative. We as individuals in the field, we thought government should be able to put a roadmap, which of course they have, but it's important to see where we align ourselves to those expectations from government. Then we will obviously see opportunities we can have as individuals, as government, as communities, and then as part of capacity building, we need to equally understand where we are relevant in this decade. Now, let me first of all start with the global energy industry conversation. And the simple reason is because the way we see energy and the way we use energy and the way we buy energy continue to change with time. So we can see energy undergoing a very serious and more robust kind of changes globally. And that is all happening because of what you call the energy transition. So energy transition has been the major reason. And just to remind ourselves, energy transition is a process whereby the globe is trying to move to a low carbon energy future, such that the residual greenhouse gases in the atmosphere are reduced to give us an extent of which we can have an annual rise in temperature of not more than 1.5 degrees centigrade. We'll be talking about this, but that is generally what the energy transition is. So we are working at the moment, we are consuming fuels such as diesel, petrol, coal, which have a huge carbon intensity, and we have to find a way to change our energy mix. And that does not necessarily means abandoning our fossil fuels, but it simply means changing the blend to be able to make sure that we create a blend of energy systems that will be able to sustain us to live a habitable planet by 2060, according to Nigeria's plan. Now, it's important to see that this energy transition is going to change how we fuel our cars, how we travel, and how we power our industries. And equally, we are going to see how that is going to happen. Now, but one more important thing is to see that this energy transition concept is driven by local policies. So every country must decide on the pathway they want to take. We have seen Nigeria sign or make a commitment of 2060 to go carbon neutral. We'll be talking about what that means. And countries such as Europe are targeting 2050 to meet their carbon neutral status. What does that mean? We are going to see what it means. Now, the speed of the transition is different for different geography. So that simply means the milestone set by different countries is affected by geography, simply meaning that the way and manner in which one country will get to net zero may differ from the speed and rate at which others may likely get there. And obviously, we get to understand that this geography is a very big term because it's having a lot of implications. Take, for example, Europe at the moment. Because of the current crisis in Ukraine, there are changes in the energy transition roadmap because there are a lot of uncertainties around how they source fuel from other parts of the world. We are not going to be talking much about the politics for today, but we are going to see it from more technical, commercial, and regulatory aspect. Now, for us to achieve energy transition, we are undergoing a number of challenges in terms of the demand pattern. We can still see that energy supply is the major factor that guides demand, but that demand differs from countries, and even in the same countries differ from rural and urban areas. Take, for example, you can use a lot of low carbon intensive energy system if you are in Lagos, but if you move out of Lagos a bit, you may have difficulty accessing certain energy sources. And for that, there are demand variation. The supply is also an issue. The security and energy poverty are also critical factors because it's not everybody who can afford to buy energy as it is. And equally, there are security issues around energy. That simply means sometimes you need the energy, but you don't have it. You cannot even get it to your home. So these are issues which are very relevant to Nigeria, but let us see the global concept in how we are going to see it generally. Now, there are 5 important energy insights, according to McKinsey, that are expected to happen on this planet within the next 20 to 30 years. Now, one of it, we are expecting to have a global energy demand to plateau by 2035 or to some literature 2037. That simply means at that stage, the energy demand is no longer rising. We do know that the global population is supporting energy demand, but we are reaching a point by 2035 whereby that increase in population is no longer significantly affecting our demand, and that is simply because we are now investing in other sources such as renewables, such as energy efficient systems, and such as other ways that we are able to co-generate energy and recycle a certain aspect of energy to a more useful terms. And we will be able to see a lot of this in our homes, but I'm sure due to time constraint, we will not be talking about that in detail. Now, another thing is electricity consumption is expected to double by 2050. That simply means everybody needs electricity, more industry, more electric cars on the road, more people, more village areas or community areas accessing electricity. That is going to cause a demand, obviously. And we are expecting our discussion for today, the gas demand is going to grow nearly to 2035. So it will continue to grow, which will give us an opportunity in Nigeria to be able to access whatever we can within the next 13 years per se. So within the next 13 years, we're expecting Nigeria to do whatever they can do to fit into the gas gross demand. Otherwise, we may end up with what you call a stranded asset. And a stranded asset is an asset that is in the ground and you cannot have the economic significance to explore it. So that means there are tendencies that our oil and gas may remain in the ground if we don't act fast now. And that is what it means in Nigeria, and that is why the gas the decade initiative is coming up. And we can see the gas decade is actually targeting to achieve the mandate before the 2035. Now, we expect the oil demand growth to slow down and peak in 2030. So that simply means we are likely going to see a decrease in using oil. And again, that is another indication that we as individuals have to change the way we are living. Obviously, all these are predictions, but one important thing is there are technological changes that drive these predictions, and these predictions equally are things that sometimes do become reality. Now, we expect a carbon emission to reduce due to abandonment of coal plants, and these are the most important 5 things we get to see. But let me just go over to give additional global perspective before we come down to the Nigerian decade of gas. So for the first time in 2035, we are expecting a point of climax, whereby a GDP that is expected to double up to 2050 globally, but is only going to attract only 14% of energy growth. That simply means the normal aspect is GDP growth comes with equivalent energy demand growth. But this is the first time where GDP doubles, but the energy demand couldn't double. And that is because of renewables, that is because of energy efficiency, and that is because people are changing the manner in which they use and access energy. Now, that is a very important point. And before we reach that point, we as Nigerians must make a good, must take a good advantage of what we have. Now, in terms of other sectors, we expect a renewable growth of 19 to 34%, and we are expecting nuclear energy to be able to complement renewables. When we say complement, is because of the fluctuating nature of renewables. A lot of time when there is a growth in demand, the renewables may not be able to meet it. So a lot of European countries use their nuclear plant as a supplement to be able to top up the remaining power required. Now, despite the expected growth in renewables, there are other key things we are expecting to see. Now, so this is the total global energy demand. If we see on this side, we can see that it's about 600 million terajoule of energy we require globally at the moment. Totally, that energy is going to increase, and that is why we can see this peak by 2050. But what it means is coal is declining, oil is declining, gas is declining, renewables are expanding. Now, this is a global trend. This has nothing to do with Nigeria alone. It's a global trend. And because we deliver and we sell our energy resources globally, what we must make sure is we do not become not relevant in terms of what we sell. So if we have the gas and we have the oil, the best time to extract and sell them is now. And that is why we are having to see the decade of gas as a very important milestone. We can see the figures, renewables will build up, gas will drop a bit by 1%, oil drops, and coal is expected to drop more. We still do have coal plants in Nigeria. It's still part of the net zero plan, but we are going to see how carbon capture play a significant role in that. Now, let us see, because we mentioned that electricity is expected to double globally. Now, most of the sectors that are expected to catch that global doubling of electricity generations are buildings and transport. Comings of electric vehicles, I'm sure they are not very much in Nigeria because of the high price of those electric vehicles. Is quite difficult. Just imagine my old Nissan car that I bought for £5,000. For me to get an electric car equivalent, I will have to pay about £35,000. That means nearly 800% higher. I can't afford it. So the most important difficult aspect that are happening even in the Western world, those electric vehicles at the moment are not sustainably okay pricing wise. But that simply means in Nigeria, it will be very difficult to penetrate, but we are likely going to see hybrid vehicles. Now we are expecting to see buildings and high standard of living. People want to live a better life. Just imagine my own grandmother that do not have a mobile phone may likely just require 1 or 2 gloves in her house for her to be happy. Maybe use a charging point for her radio or anything. But imagine people living in the buildings now, you require a lot of sources for energy, cooking, heating, television set, internet, and a lot of other gadgets will be required to add additional certain amount of energy. And that is how it will increase. Now we can see that major contributors of those areas are China and India. They are growing a lot of solar activities within their sectors, just to be able to make sure that they provide some sort of a supply from a renewable side. Now, in terms of the gas, which is our major discussion for today, we are expecting that the power sector grows up to about 2% per annum over the 2 decades we are expecting. That simply means more gas-powered plants are expected to be built and utilized. And that's simply because of the high and ambitious nature of what you call the combined cycle gas turbine plant, which have one of the most efficient technology for power generation. Now, we can see what happens in the transport sector. A lot of usage of natural gas is coming in now marine because diesel is being phased out because of its carbon emission as well as its hazardous nature. So Europe and Western world are replacing CNG and LNG in most of their transport sector. The sea transport sector will be here. Now, we are expecting China to grow their gas demand, replacing coal, as well as the industries growing by about 200 billion cubic meters. Now, we are expecting a point whereby by 2035, gas and renewables will be able to compete with each other price-wise. At the moment, renewables are much more expensive than natural gas, but in the future, the price of renewables are expected to fall. And if that happens, we are expecting a competition. Whether that happens in Nigeria or not is a different game, but this is really looking at developed nations to achieve that. It may likely take us probably 2040 for us to get to that point. Now, so in terms of carbon emission, we are expecting the emission to rise until 2024, and then we expect a lot of reduction. But no matter what we do, under all these scenarios of reduction, we are still not going to achieve the 1.5 degrees targeted by the United Nations, which is quite difficult and very traumatizing kind of knowledge, because the globe we live in will continue to be hotter than expected. Now, we have limited time, and unfortunately, I will have to be moving a bit faster than I should stay. But just to give an idea in terms of the carbon balance and how we ended up with a lot of incompatibilities. Annually, we do have 38 gigaton a year, which 25% is taken up by the ocean, 32% is taken by the land, and 44% remain in the atmosphere. And this is the balance. We can simply see that the net atmospheric CO2 is 3,150 gigaton. This is what we expect to have in the atmosphere to keep this value constant. But because of the emission coming from energy, buildings, industry, transport, agri, land, there are more emissions going compared to what is being reabsorbed on land and ocean. And for that reason, we have a net balance of a certain amount of about 17 gigaton, which we have to find a way to deal with. And that is why all this concept of energy transition, energy efficiency is coming up to make sure that we reduce our carbon intensity, we reduce how much energy we take, we optimize our consumptions, and that will help to make sure that we can do a lot with little amount of energy. That is what we are currently that is what is currently happening everywhere. So that simply means if you are somebody like me who, while I live in Lagos, I can leave my bulb on to go to work and come back, and meat is there because I don't really see any significant switching it up and on. And these are some of the things that we get to learn to make sure that we minimize usage of energy, and that will continue to help us lower our emission in terms of efficiency. Now, let us come back to the major concept of the discussion, and I'm sure I just have about 20 minutes, so I will have to rush a bit. Now, it's important to understand that the Decade of Gas initiative came in as a very strategic policy that will drive Nigeria's growth to become a developed nation, but obviously using our gas reserves. What the attraction of gas is simply because gas has a low carbon economy importance. So it's a low carbon economy material compared to oil. That means it's something that we can bank on for the next foreseeable future. In fact, recently, EU have given a grant for, have given a permission for gas to be part of their net zero, meaning even after 2050, Europe and other parts of the Western world, who are our major consumers of gas, we export through our LNG, is still going to take our gas, which is a good news to Nigeria. But one important thing is, if we don't get this done within the next 10 years, we will still be in trouble, because we have seen recently a lot of countries are coming to Nigeria to look for gas because we do have the gas. But unfortunately, the gas requires time to develop, require investment for it to be developed. And because that investment has not happened, the infrastructure, pipelines, processing facilities, pills have not been developed. That simply means the lowest we can get gas, additional gas to Europe and other customers may likely take us 3 to 5 years minimum. But remember, Europe are looking for gas to complement the gas they couldn't take from Russia this week or this month. And that is really a serious disadvantage of the delay we have been having to develop our gas reserve. And that is why the Decade of Gas initiative is a wonderful thing to happen. And we can see progress being made, but still there are critical areas to capture on. Now, so it's important to understand that in Nigeria, we only have 10% of our population having access to clean energy. Only 60% have access to electricity. That means 40% of Nigerians still do not have access to electricity. And when I say access, I'm not talking about power cut. I'm talking about people who couldn't get the electricity to themselves or to their houses. Well, we have our GDP of 410 in 2020. We are expected to grow it to 1,636 billion by 2030, which is a huge aspect, but there are fluctuations in oil price. Today, oil price is $106 per barrel. Good news for Nigeria, but how long is it going to last? Nobody knows. And on the other side, we have made commitment to Paris Agreement. We have low oil reserves compared to gas, and energy is being diversified, and we have suffered a lot during COVID. So we have to wake up and do something that will help us move further and better to grow our country. And we have made a lot of commitment to go in a more greener kind of way. We have made 20% commitment for greenhouse reduction by 2030, up to 45% conditional reduction. We wanted to end gas flaring by 2030. We have an SDG, that is the United Nations Social Development Goals, to be achieved by 2030. And if we look at these 17 areas, up to now, we cannot tick one of them to say that we have achieved them in 2022. Remember, this is 2022. If we have to end poverty by 2030, zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, clean water, just take this first line. It's going to be a huge challenge for us to do that, because we require the infrastructure and stability for us to do that. And more importantly, we have signed to be carbon neutral by 2030. That is more difficult to achieve than all others, but we are going to see what that means. So decade of gas is meant to achieve a certain utilization of natural gas such that we achieve lower greenhouse emission. We have a very good potential reserves that is as big as about a very significant reserve in the world, 9 world exporter. We have potentials, and we are having a lot of evolving policies that comes up to support this initiative. But again, we get to see where we are heading to, domestically and internationally. Now, let us look at Nigeria in an international arena, because one of our targets is to export more gas. Exporting more gas simply means we are going to compete with Nigeria, is going to compete with countries such as Qatar, US, and Australia. These are countries that export more gas than anybody else in the world. Unfortunately, we are targeting the same market with them. And we know economy of scale, meaning if Nigeria cannot afford to sell, remember our Nigeria LNG Trans 7 has a bench price of $8 per million BTU, which is a good stand now. But if the gas price crashes to $6 per million BTU, that project may no longer be viable. So that simply means at this stage, we have ample opportunity to be able to compete well, because we can target. Look at where Nigeria is selling gas to: France, India, Italy, Portugal, Spain, and Turkey. These are some of the markets we are targeting. But this is the same market even our neighbor Algeria is targeting. Nonetheless, other bigger systems. And that simply means getting the gas there, getting the right contract for a long term is not an easy job. So that simply means we have to redefine our Nigerian portfolio within the international market for us to see that. We can look at the gas hubs globally, but that is a discussion for another day. But that will help us shape our export market. We have not had investment over time. We have to compete with much more bigger countries. We had countries that were importers, now they are exporters, and there's a declined gas market in Europe because of their changes to renewable. So we have to do something about it. And that is why the Decade of Gas is a good initiative. Now, in Nigeria, we equally do need the gas. So apart from the international arena, in the local sector, we equally need the gas. What do we need the gas for? We require it in the power sector. At least we have an installed capacity of 12,200 megawatts in Nigeria. right? Now, that is a kind of good thing for the country, but we already know that we always struggle to deliver 5,000 megawatts. Few weeks behind us, we had a total shutdown where we couldn't generate anything in Nigeria. Why? Simply because our market is not a matured market, and we don't have transmission and distribution system for that power, and we don't have a payment system. And we are going to see how we can get there if we have to really be a very more serious country. Now, we need gas for a lot of other things in cement industries, but they equally require large transmission and distribution pipelines to get the gas to where it has to go. But for us to get it all, we require a third-party access. And I'm sure a lot of us have had what you call the network code. The network code for gas is the recently launched gas principles for it to be able to supply gas in non-discriminatory manner and making sure that there are transparency. It's also another very big conversation for another day. But for us to get the gas to everybody, we must make sure that there are third-party access routes. Now, we have gas-based industries. We have the ambitious industries such as Ajakuta plants, where metals and other raw materials can be developed, but these places require unconditional gas supply, not a gas supply that you supply today, tomorrow you don't have supply. It's a problem. Now, that is what the decade of the gas requires, and that is how we can move to become gas-based economy, because the fundamental principle of decade of gas initiative is to make Nigeria a gas-based economy. And that simply means our current vehicles may have to be driven by CNG. And what that simply means, you can still keep your petrol tank or diesel tank, but you have LPG bottles installed in your car. And we are going to see that that is much more cheaper to drive CNG vehicles compared to a normal vehicle or petrol, but regulatory requirements are necessary to be able to provide loan and support for people to convert their cars to CNGs. Now, let us see a comparable indication. If I have 4,000 naira, now, if I buy CNG with it, it can take me 210 kilometers. I'm sure it will take me to probably Ogun from Lagos with that 4,000. But if I have a diesel car and I bought 4,000 diesel, it will only take me 178 kilometers. So that simply means CNG is much more cheaper than petrol, and moving to a gas-based economy is going to make our life much more better, much more easier, much more safer. And most our Keke Napep and other taxis, Uber and Bolt and many other taxis can benefit from this. So we are expecting cheaper kind of traveling, but we do require these stations. The CNG stations are necessary for us to do that. In Nigeria, the only existing CNG stations we have are owned by Dangote to power his 500 trucks. So there are a lot of things to do, but we are getting there. We have export opportunities also. Being a gas-based country, we can supply gas from Nigeria down to Europe. We have the Trans-Saharan gas pipeline that is targeting to deliver 30 billion cubic feet of gas using 48-inch and 18 compressors. We can supply to North Africa and Europe. We have the West African gas pipeline supplying to West African countries such as Ghana, Togo. There's a gas supply security is threatening the pipelines. That simply means sometimes the gas flows, sometimes the gas may not flow. Now, we can equally see that there are issues around third-party access. That is a big topic, but we'll be able to just digest what it is. So the simple terms is government is making a headway. Government is bringing some interventions. National gas policy was launched in 2017. AKK gas pipeline project was awarded in 2018. Gas player commercialization came in, and gas network code was launched 2020. LNG Trans-7 financial investment decision was made in 2020. We launched Decade of Gas, and we have seen the PIA equally that has been launched. So that means we are heading to a point of where we have to get to. But the unfortunate or the most troubling part is the fact that our policies are not moving according to the time frame we are setting. We are meant to be at least being in the year 2022, we are supposed to have moved to a point whereby we have an existing infrastructure in place, but that has not happened. That simply means for us to be meet the Decade of Gas initiative, we have to be more serious than we are as a nation, because we want to generate a liquid market. And for us to have a liquid market, those of you in economics must have understood this better than I do. We must have large and diverse players in the energy market. That simply big and smaller companies able to operate without barriers. And then we have a market-driven pricing among the wholesale and retail market. And that is what the network code and the PIA is meant to bring. And then we have the third-party open access. But that is quite a difficult one to achieve. But in my expectation for Decade of Gas, there are 5 areas that we get to have in share. One of it is the market development. We have to move the Nigerian market from being an unmatured gas market to a matured gas market. And that goes through a transition, but it's not impossible. We can see that the authority and commission have been developed, charged with the responsibility of moving the market. But one thing we have learned from countries that have achieved some of this target, at some point, you have to separate government from some of the things you do. Otherwise, you may not make a headway. In terms of regulation, it's another area we still have a serious pricing discrepancies, and we get the gas supplied only to the larger players. People who are cement manufacturers, people who are brick manufacturers, people who are making bread are still having lack of access to that because of serious issues. We do require infrastructure. We equally require supply options so that as a customer, I do have multiple supply to get my gas from. And that will help me bargain the gas at the right price. And then we should have an enforceable third-party access rules across our network. Now, this is what I put on in, this is my own thought. If we have to get to a gas-based economy by 2030, in terms of market, we get to move from undeveloped market to a fully matured market. In terms of regulation, we have to move from heavy regulation to just regulate to maintain competition. We get a pseudo-regulated competition, and then before we get it to a market process-driven regulation. In terms of infrastructure, they are still limited. We get a lot of investment to have our interconnected pipelines and have a developed infrastructure for both domestic and export market. Our supply options are still underdeveloped. We still have 203 trillion cubic feet of gas in the ground. If we don't explore it now, we may never be able to have the opportunity to do that. We get to have supply options versus demand growth. We are expecting export versus domestic convergence, which is another important point to have. And then we are expecting abundant supply versus demand saturation. In terms of third-party access, we are having a very monopolistic market at the moment, heavily owned and operated by NGC, Nigerian Gas Company. So that has to change by having a more private partnership coming in place. We get to have improved third-party access and bundle supply and trading platforms, and then creating retail and competition. Now, in terms of the last aspect I will be talking about in terms of the skills. So for us to achieve all this, and that is why capacity building is important, we require skills for us to get to achieve the decade of gas and to achieve the net zero target, and equally to achieve a more low carbon future as individuals. And those skill sets may differ from executive, mid-cadre, as well as vocational level. For the purpose of this, because one of the most interesting aspects of this conversation I have seen is trying to inculcate more entrepreneurial thinking. And more entrepreneurial thinking is supported mostly by vocational system. I wanted to give an example of a typical entrepreneurial system in the UK we operate that do not require much from government, and you'll be able to make a salary that is more than anybody I can think of in Nigeria. Now, at the moment, let us look at it. As an individual who are graduate, diploma graduate, HND graduate, degree graduate, all you have to do is to become a gas engineer. Whether you read electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, civil engineering, you can all have that. But the only thing that the government has to do has to make that a professional and regulatory job, meaning you must qualify to do it. We can see a lot of gas explosions in Nigeria. Unfortunately, a lot of lives are being lost simply because that sector is not regulated. You have somebody or you have a family friend who need a job today, tomorrow you give him a job and you ask him to be a manager at a gas or LPG location, or to be a supervisor. How do we do that? It's only in Nigeria that happens. So those market or those skills jobs are highly regulated. In the UK, we have over 120,000 gas safe engineers. We call them gas safe engineers because they are registered. They have a license number and they have this tag. These are the only people allowed to touch your LPG bottles, to sell you LPG, to look at your boiler systems, to check your gas supply, to make gas transportation, and make sure all joints or any constructions work are done. So there are huge opportunities, but the government must come in to regulate the sector such that people who are not qualified to do it are not allowed to even come to your place to touch your boiler systems, and at least we will be able to reduce fatalities. So it's a 25 weeks training program that involves practical and theoretical exams, and that helps you to qualify to be a gas safe engineer. So once you are a gas safe engineer, all you have to do as an entrepreneur is to get your truck, a simple van. You can either buy it or take a loan from banks, or you can change your current Golf. If you drive a Golf in Lagos, you can use your Golf and be able to have that registration certification. Once you have that, that simply means by regulation, you are the only person allowed to touch people gas systems, to sell gas systems, to monitor gas systems, to do anything related to the gas industry. And that is what will create jobs that the government must not create, because every day we see government promising to create jobs, but they do not create enabling environment for such jobs to come in. You only need a proper regulation for a market to come in. You don't need a rocket science. You don't need to build refineries before people get jobs. At the moment, we have people who are refrigerators repairers, air conditioner repairers, boiler repairers, and other domestic supply system repairers. So these are the people we get to support and be able to keep it in a regulatory form such that you can always get them if you have to. And they earn so much, guys. These people earn more than my salary as a university staff. So this is important. And once you get it, I'm sure this is more than about 3 million naira a month. And you can count the number of individuals in Nigeria earning 3 million a month. Am I right? So this is an important entrepreneurial way to go, but we require government regulation, understand, and to implement this. Now, among my last few slides, this is just telling us, for us to get to the gas hub, we have to go through a longer milestone. But in Nigerian system, we are only at this point now. So we have many steps to take for us to go. We don't have time to go through this, but this is another thing that explains market development systems in a gas area. I will end with these few slides telling us about capacity building. So for us to build our capacity as engineers, we get in technical areas, people who study engineering are relevant technical. They need to understand concept around gas pipeline operations, compressor spacings, line sizing, looping and design, metering, authorization, gas quality parameters and interchangeability, gas pipeline safety design operations, standard and codes, gas pipeline networks, and line pack management systems. One of the things that I always tell people, I live in the UK, but I do a lot of work for Nigeria in terms of the line pack. So just imagine if some of our entrepreneurs in Nigeria do have that skill. You really don't have to come to Manchester to get my brain for you to understand your line pack for Escravos Lagos pipeline system. Now, in terms of commercial areas, you need to understand the tariffs, pricing methodology, licensing, and market dynamics, and a lot of other things which we don't have to keep mentioning for today. Apologies, I'm running short of time. I will just stop here and happy to answer questions if any. Thank you very much, brothers and sisters. Jazakumullah khair.
Wayakum, wayakum. Thank you so much, sir, for this wonderful session. Please, you can mute your mic. As I said earlier to our attendees on this call, you can see that this is a wonderful session that even me and some of us are engrossed that we are not even checking the time, because there are a lot of informations and what is required for us, especially the skill that is required that can be earned in 25 weeks, is also mentioned for entrepreneur. Because one of the questions I saw from our listener is part of what you mentioned. I'm still going to read that out later. So thank you once again, sir, for this session. And this also goes to the policymakers on this call. On this session, we have policymakers here, the engineers, we have politicians among us. So the transformation and the transition of our infrastructure, like he said, is very important. Policies, regulations. So to the politicians in the House, you also have your message from this session, and that was why I said it's going to be inspiring. So there are a lot of opportunities for us with this Nigeria Gas Decade of Initiative. Before I go to the question in the chat box, please, if you have questions, kindly drop them in the chat box so that I can read it out to our guest lecturer. Unfortunately, we will only be able to answer 1 or 2 questions because of time. So let's go straight to the question. One of them that I have from one of our listeners that sent to me privately is, what is the need for entrepreneurs and individuals? How can we be better prepared as individuals? This is one of the questions. If you can answer that, sir. You're on mute, sir.
Yes. Thank you very much, sir. Apologies. Now, a very interesting question. And to be honest, wherever you see a nation growing, is growing because of entrepreneurs. And I'm very happy to get a question related to how do we really get this entrepreneur thing. So there are 3 things to happen. There is the things you have to do at your own level. There are things to do at government level, and there are things to do at community level. Now, let me start with the individual level. For those of us who are wishing to run and operate entrepreneurship in the gas industry, particularly, or in energy industry, what we are expecting is individuals to be basically familiar with the energy systems, energy concept of demand and supply. The demand that comes in, will help us identify where are the opportunities. Take, for example, in our communities, we can check how many people use LPG bottles or buy LPG bottles from our own community. You can look at it. At what price do they get that LPG bottle? And how often do they get that bottle to themselves? Now, as an entrepreneur, what I can simply do is to first of all try to see, can I develop a supply chain that will help beat the supply record of this existing supplies and price? If I can do that, I can open my own company, be able to get people that will do this work for me, and be able to now discuss with the consumers of the LPG to say, okay, I can guarantee you supply for 3 years, and I can guarantee you a market price of so amount. If there are changes to the price, I will always let you know. So you will be able to start something at community level before moving to your ward level or your local government level or your state level. That is one. The second aspect is areas in terms of training needs. We can see a lot of these areas we have been discussing today. You go to universities, you go to colleges of education, you go to polytechnics, are not part of our syllabus. So our syllabus require a bit of update, but because we are speaking as an entrepreneur, what you can always do is to make sure that you create a center for giving that kind of knowledge to younger generations, so that people will be able to come to you as an entrepreneur. You give short trainings for a day or two on gas demand forecast, or energy consumption, or energy transition, or pipelines, gas transportation, or any other area that is in relation to the net zero or decade of gas. That is what you can do at individual level, but equally at policy level, government need to come in and provide a lot of support for our entrepreneurs. We can see one of the typical systems that they do have in the West is that opportunity for you. There are always a funding available if you want to develop something. You pay certain amount, government pays the remaining, and you will not pay a dime until you are able to start making money out of it. And one more important thing that happens at community level is our ability to co-create things. So instead of working as an individual, I can say, okay, I have a colleague who lives in Ogun, I live in Lagos. Can we work together to make sure that we can, because there is an LPG plant around Ogun, I can work with him to be able to meet some of my community or local government supply. So you always need to network. I'm very happy to give any support we require, and I'm very happy to network with people to give you some of the areas, and you can get trained freely without paying anything, and equally connect you with some of our international entrepreneurs, so that you'll be able to get more international support, because international bodies do fund entrepreneurship. Hope that helps. Thank you.
Oh, this really helps, because there are a lot of candidates for that opportunity just threw out there. So we'll be contacting you for that. And this is why I said in the beginning that this is going to be an inspiring session, and we never knew we are going to have this kind of opportunity as well. Thank you for that. The next and the last question I will read out because of time is, in Nigeria today, diesel cost is increasing and impacting the cost of service.
Yes.
It seems gas will be the alternative, but
Yes.
how can an entrepreneur play in this regard?
Okay, thank you very much, Tayo. Very interesting question as well. Now, what happened is the increasing price of diesel in Nigeria is caused by a number of issues, and those issues are related to supply chain. Now, if we don't have refineries that produce diesel in Nigeria, the only option we have is to import diesel. If we have to import diesel, we have to keep in mind that every rise in Forex, the exchange rate is going to affect the current price of diesel. Now, but that is one aspect that may not be within the hand of entrepreneur to control. That is a market. But what happens is government comes in to make sure that there are appropriate checking of how pricing are done, and pricing should be cost reflective. Nobody say you should not increase price because of Forex. Yes, you should, but that price should be a market-driven price, not just a subjective pricing. And that is the role of politicians and government in particular. Now, the opportunity, again, there is opportunity for gas, because wherever you work with diesel, opportunity is for gas to replace diesel in the future. Now, that opportunity exists, and what we can do as entrepreneur. Now, we can see that under the current network code, there are opportunities for gas supply into the entry point and taking gas at low pressures at certain alternatives. One of the things that people should think of doing is coming up with a company that is, no matter how small it is, let that company be a company that will be able to show interest that, okay, we want to support government in terms of monitoring social uptake between Alakija and this area, or between Ogun and this area, because there are a lot of people making bread, people making brick, concrete and others in that area. So I want to be the coordination point for that to happen. So you speak to the people who need the gas, and you speak to NGC and NGMC, you supply gas, we want to uptake the gas. At what price can you sell the gas? So you are at least an entrepreneur as a middleman. We require a lot of middleman, and that do not require much investment. But obviously and eventually there could be needs for investment in terms of metering, in terms of metering systems, as well as many other things that will evolve. But these are some of the little opportunities that do comes in natural gas systems, in LPG systems, being a middle person or taking a middle person role. That is quite very easy, because you'll be interfacing between supplier and the consumer. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Abubakar Abbas. This is, your answer and the questions, the two questions, they have a lot of other questions in them, and your answer is so elaborate. So we really appreciate your time, and thank you for this session. Before we go into the, before I call on Brother Abdul Rashid to give us the vote of thanks, the message from what I've gathered from our distinguished guest speaker today is also for the politicians in our midst. Let us look at the regulation to empower the entrepreneurs. We have a lot of Nigeria with entrepreneurial skills, but they need that empowerment. They need that platform for them to be able to thrive and even survive. So let us make government approachable in our own time when we get there, so that we can give opportunities to a lot of people. Thank you once again, sir. I would like to call on one of my brothers to give us a vote of thanks and appreciation remarks. Brother Barry Abdul Rashid, please.
Thank you.
Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. We thank Almighty Allah for spending our lives to this moment. We are grateful to our guest speaker for the wonderful job well done. We thank you so much. You have indeed done justice to the topic. You are giving us a very great deal of an insight into the topic, and we appreciate you for that. May Allah reward you in manifold. And to all our LASUMEGA members, as well as our professional friends and families, and also various organizations that has joined us today for this session, we say a big thank you to you as well for your presence and for honoring our invitation and support. We thank you again, and also for all our panelists and officials that has worked on this throughout this session. We thank you so much for sacrifice. May Allah reward each and every one of you abundantly. Jazakumullah khair.
Jazakallah. Thank you very much.
Wayakum. Thank you, Brother Abdul Rashid Abari. Thank you for that vote of thanks. Like I mentioned earlier, that this professional development forum is for us to incubate ideas, expose our members to several entrepreneurial skills, IT skills, and other professions. So, like our distinguished guest speaker said, entrepreneurial skill is going to go a long way in this Nigerian gas of Nigeria gas of decade of gas initiative. So on to the next session, starting from next week, we'll be having entrepreneurship success series. For it is going to be a 4-week session with different captain of industry. We'll be talking about on the 11th of September. We'll be talking about strategy and business model by Ayodeji Balogun. We all know Ayodeji Balogun is one of the CEO Afex Commodity Exchange. We'll be talking also on the 18th, inshallah, on the 18th, on market research and sizing by CEO Baobab. That is Kola Oshinowo. Most of us are familiar with Kola Oshinowo. And inshallah, on the 25th of September, we'll have a session on product development and innovation, which will be we'll be having our guest speakers Olufemi Davis, Group Head, Product and Innovation, Pure Pay. That's going to be another wonderful session. To end that entrepreneurship series, we'll be having also again our CEO of Afex Commodity Exchange, Ayodeji Balogun. He will be speaking on financial planning. So we have outlined our sessions to complement one another. We know that entrepreneurial skills is going to be required from today's session, and our guest speaker has done a very wonderful job in making us know the kind of opportunities that await us in this Nigeria Decade of Gas initiative. And these entrepreneurial skills also requires knowledge. We need to be informed. We need to be aware of how the market trend will be. That is why we have lined up this entrepreneurship success series. Please don't miss it. The first one is going to be on the September 11th, on the 11th of September, inshallah, till 2nd of October, inshallah. Please stay tuned with us. We have a lot of series that is going to be impactful, like the one we had today and the previous ones we've been having in the past weeks. So to end the session, I would like to call on Brother Mukadan. If Brother Mukadan is on this session to give us the closing dua. As Muslims, we start with prayers and we end with prayers.
Yeah,
so if Brother Mukadan, if you're on this call, please give us the closing dua. Okay, in the absence of Brother Mukadan, I would like to call on Brother Saba to give us the closing dua. Brother Saba, please.
Thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for counting us among those that witnessed this session and this day. We pray to him to accept it from us as a act of worship and to count us among those that witnessed many more of it on the surface of the heart. Amen. We thank our lecturer and also pray that may Almighty Allah in His infinite continue to bless our lecturer, guide him right in his endeavors, and accept all his heart desires. We are proud of him. He is representing Nigeria well, and we pray to Allah to also continue to bless him. He's one of our own model. He is our own model. We look forward to him and we pray for more success for him. For all those of us that have listened to this lecture, we pray to Allah to guide us right to make decisions that will make it beneficial for us in this world and the hereafter. That will make it betterment for our economic situation. Like he has told us a lot about opportunities in gas and how gas utilization is going to peak by the year 2030. It's an information we should make good use of. I will pray to Allah to guide us through those information. I also want to use this opportunity to thank one of our able brother, Dr. Ibrahim Mutala, who has helped facilitated the connection and the lecturer. May Almighty Allah to be with him as well. He's presently in Germany, so he's also representing us well. We're also proud of him. We are proud of him as a Nigerian. We're also proud of him as an alumni of LASUMEGA. May Almighty Allah to be with him and his family. And I want to for every member of LASUMEGA, We pray Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to going to guide us right. These are platforms we are using to network ourselves, reaching out to ourselves all over the globe. We have members across the globe. We pray that Almighty Allah make all our members successful both locally and internationally. Allahumma rabbana taqabbal minna innaka antas samiul alim wa tub alayna ya maulana innaka antat tawwabur rahim waghfir lana warhamna innaka antal ghafurur rahim bi rahmatika ya arhamar rahimin. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina maulana Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam taslima. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun alal mursalin walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.
Thank you so much, Brother Saba, for that closing to thank you, Dr. Abubakar. If you have something, I think you wanted to say something.
Thank you, Tom. No, thank you very much for this great honor. It is really an honor for me to have this conversation and share my thoughts with my brothers and sisters. Jazakumullah khair.
We'll be looking forward to having you again.
Inshallah.
Inshallah.
Inshallah. Thank you, brother Tayo. Masala.
Thank you, sir.